Hi, and welcome to TV3 Extra. Today, I wanted to talk about something that affects a lot of people, but maybe misdiagnosed, and that is dyslexia. Dyslexia has touched my family and several members of my family and throughout different generations. So I am so thankful to have Kari Bucholz with us today. She is the owner of Haley's Hope Dyslexia Center in West Fargo, North Dakota. And Kari, thank you so much for joining us to talk about dyslexia and bring a little awareness about it.
Well, I am very happy to do so. Part of my mission is really educating and having the public and parents understand what dyslexia is. And this is just a great way to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So Kari, how has dyslexia touched your family?
That is, a really big, loaded question. It has changed my life. It has changed the life of my immediate family, my husband, our older daughter, and obviously our son, Haley, who is the family member that is dyslexic, profoundly dyslexic. And changed my life in the fact that the career that I went to college for and the business that I had created after that, I let go because I knew I needed to help others who are struggling with this little learning disability called dyslexia. And so it started when our daughter, who's 3 years older than our son, went to school and just, as a new mom, everything went smoothly. Didn't even think of schooling or learning, or because she just went to school and used to get in the car on the way home and do homework, and everything was good. And then along came this little boy who was the opposite of our daughter, daughter was shy and reserved. And this little boy came along and he just was busy and always wanting to make friends and talk to people. And so I didn't worry at all about him going to school. But right early on in preschool, we were being told that he wasn't keeping up with the kids in his class. And I didn't understand what that meant because he's a smart little guy. And I said, is he disturbing the class? Is he, behavior? And they're like, no, he's great. He just isn't keeping up with the kids. And as I often say, this started a 2.5-year journey of trying to figure out why this bright, happy, outgoing little boy turned into somebody who him and his mother, me, cried at night and didn't want to go to school. And we couldn't figure out through tutors and neuropsychs and interventions and hearing tests and vision tests why he still wasn't able to learn like his peers. And trying to find out what that answer was and having to research on my own because I knew there was so much more to him than a behavioral issue. Coming across this little world called dyslexia and researching and trying to figure out who around here knows anything about this. Researched information out of California, which is, Susan Barton, and figured out I could go to Minneapolis to really look at this particular learning disability. And changed our life. In first grade, he was diagnosed as profoundly dyslexic, severely dysgraphic. And we traveled to St. Paul every week, 2-3 days at a time for 6 months until I could get trained on how to teach him how he learned. So, it greatly changed not only my life, but the life of my family.
It was astounding to me to learn that 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. So what is dyslexia? I think that's maybe a misnomer that it's always you just, see letters backwards or words backwards. What is it?
Yeah, it's a staggering statistic, but really it's up to 20% of our population has some level or degree of dyslexia, and dyslexia not treated leads to illiteracy. But dyslexia has nothing to do with eyesight. It has nothing to do with seeing things backwards or why we write things backwards sometimes. Dyslexia is a oral language processing challenge. So our language piece of our brain in the left hemisphere has a hard time processing all of the sounds in all of the words that we speak. And when we have to start reading, instead of just listening to words, we have to start reading words. Sometimes we don't even understand what that letter is. We don't even understand that that shape is an M, and that sound on that M says or a lot of those vowel sounds that, you know, that shape is an A, and its real short sound is a, not a. So dyslexia is difficulty processing language in its oral form and in its written form. The reason we sometimes look at those things as being flipped is because we have to look at those typically flipped letters, those B's and D's, which are, I always say, are created kind of the same way, because it's a stick in a circle. And, you know, it's trying to figure out what side that circle goes on to determine if it's a B or a D or a P or a Q. So it's more about the directionality of how letters are written than seeing things backwards. It's, you know, dyslexia can seem like it's very complicated, but it's really a very simple thing to identify if you're using the right tools to identify. And it's successfully remediated. And so I always, you know, talk about the fact that this is not, you know, this is not a difficult learning disability to overcome. It's never cured, but it's certainly something that can be treated and overcome pretty easily with the right kind of remediation.
And as you were saying, there's different levels of severity. And so are there different levels of, or maybe not levels, but different symptoms that people can portray, or, you know?
Yeah. You know, symptoms are typically about the same when we're looking at those, kind of checking off that checklist. But some of them are things that you would never think about. So, you know, early signs are not speaking by a year old, or saying those cute little words like hankaber, biscotti, trouble learning the alphabet, trouble rhyming, understanding that cat, bat, sat rhyme, trouble tying your shoes in kindergarten, first grade, where you're like, you know, why is that an issue? But it's that directionality piece of, you know, left, right, up and down. That is one of those pieces of dyslexia that I often call that plus of dyslexia. That's not just about reading and spelling. It's also about those spatial directionality issues. So somebody more on that severe or profound end will have more warning signs, and they will be deeper into those directionality issues. Understanding math concepts, knowing, you know, your directions, left, right, up, down, before, after. What do those mean in context of language? Understanding time, you know, what is AM and PM? You know, why is 11 PM different than 11 AM? So those are some of those deeper challenges that some of our severe to profound dyslexic kiddos have, and also adults, because we work with several adults that haven't been identified or haven't been able to have some remediation, and who still can't read or write. And you know, we can work with anybody, any age. It's never too late to learn how to read and write.
You know, something that I found very interesting, as my family has worked with you and in getting some information on dyslexia, is that people can have trouble with a lot of steps in something, and also that they tend to not like to do things in columns. and
Yeah.
to me, that was like an aha moment, because I'm like, oh, this makes sense now. I'm seeing, because there was a lot of struggles going on in my family, and that made a lot of sense.
Well, think of when I said before, it's a language processing challenge, right? And so when we are giving orally a lot of steps or a lot of directions for somebody to do, which is, it's normal. I mean, even just, read a chapter in a book. You need to open up to the right page. You need to, read 3 or 4 pages. You need to answer the questions in the back. So those are all oral language taxing issues that somebody with dyslexia has to have them broken down into individual steps. So number one, I always, talk about, even if you get the kids ready for school, or if you're going, out for dinner, or if you're going to a movie and, you gotta, get your shoes on, get your coat on, make sure you have whatever, your backpack going to school in the morning, and get in the car and, grab your banana to eat for breakfast. Well, literally one time we went to Minneapolis to do tutoring, and Haley didn't have any shoes, and it's winter. I don't know how he got out of the house and into the car in the garage without shoes on, but it was one of those steps in there that just there's too many steps for him to process and complete. And that's all oral language. And it's the same difference of now look at, I'm reading directions to take a quiz or to finish a paper. And not only am I challenged with reading it, I'm challenged with understanding it because I can't read the words. And then I have to do 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 things on that page. So it just affects so many different areas. As an adult or as somebody who is older, this gets me every time I go to the gas station. Think about this when you go to the gas station. How do you get gas out of that pump nowadays? You pick up the pump, but you can hardly even pick up the pump and get into your car before it asks you what your zip code is. Or it asks you, do you want to pay by credit card, cash, or check, or whatever it is? And you have to punch one of those before it'll even let you open it up. And then it asks you if you want a car wash, and you want a premium, a silver, or a, whatever. All of those words, if you can't read that, you can't get gas. Right? You literally can't get gas in your car because you can't just pick it up and put it in and go pay cash inside. So those are those plus challenges of our individuals with dyslexia. I'm not sure I answered that question directly, but
yes, I just wanted you to touch on that. And it's kind of, well, it's very eye-opening to see, and it's so helpful to understand what these people are going through. Because there's a lot of frustration, when, yes, like you say, when you give a lot of directions in the morning, or, okay, before bed, I need you to do this, 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 and this, and this. And, yeah. And you don't understand, why is this not getting done?
Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing in houses. And I, my gut is to help that child learn how to work with their dyslexia. But I'm not doing my job if I don't help parents understand why some of those things are frustrating. And I think that is a breaking moment for families in general, because it gives parents some time to reflect and relieve themselves of the fact that, it doesn't matter how hard I push, because it's so hard for these kids. We have to learn how to work with their strengths instead of work against their weaknesses. And it happened in our house, just understanding that question from him all the time was, aren't we leaving yet? Or what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Well, it's 15 minutes after you asked me last time. Well, what's 15 minutes? And, when do I get to go to the birthday party, and sitting and being ready 3 hours beforehand, and getting so frustrated because I can't tell you enough times that it's not time yet. But yet when we as a family figured out that we could say, You know what, Haley? It's one movie. In one movie's time, we'll be ready to go. Or, the time that it takes us to drive to school is how long it will take before we get to this place. So we have to learn as parents how to work with how they process information. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And now there's, being that dyslexia does affect a lot of people, there are a lot of well-known people that have had dyslexia. Can you share some of kind of the famous people that have dyslexia or have had it?
Well, I'm grateful that more people are admitting or coming out as being dyslexic or having some challenges. And so some of those that, from my younger years, and one that I really love is Henry Winkler. And he wrote a series of books called Hank Zipster about his experiences as a dyslexic student. However, he never knew he was dyslexic until his grandson was struggling and realized that he was dyslexic. And then Henry was like, well, that's me as a kid, Tom Cruise. I'm looking at, who are some people that we could relate to. Jennifer Aniston in recent years has said she's, struggled with dyslexia. Richard Branson is a huge, very dyslexic individual, very successful, but very dyslexic, and is very vocal about his challenges. Steven Spielberg, again, very successful but great challenges. So, we have a lot of really successful people to look up to. And I say that in the sense that it's just really kind of extra hard to get there for our kids, but it's so possible. I just want to make sure that our kids and our parents realize that it has nothing to do with their abilities. We need to let them see what their strengths and abilities are, and we can, so they can become whatever they want to be. Many times, and I was one of them, early on, looking at Haley not being able to be successful in academics, I was one of those people that thought, I will be happy if he graduates from high school, because he asked me every year, Mom, am I going to get to the 4th grade? Mom, am I going to get to the 5th grade? Mom, did I pass 7th grade? Every year. But realizing that it has nothing to do with their abilities. And if we can find these individuals and help them, they can go to any college, any university, any kind of setting that they want, because they have the ability. So we kind of made that switch over in our sense when we really started to understand and allow him to have the tools he needed, not just for reading and writing, but for life skills. And again, it changed his life. And that's one of the reasons we really moved from a tutoring center to a dyslexia learning center. So not only do we focus on that remediation of those core skills of dyslexia, but we really strive to build those life skills.
And one other thing I wanted to briefly touch on before we go into the story of Haley's Hope Dyslexia Learning Center is that dyslexia is hereditary.
Yeah, absolutely. I often say it's kind of like a flip of a coin. There can be family members in the past that have struggled that we know. I had a literacy coach working for me for 3 or 4 years, and talked to her family about it, what she was doing. And her dad finally said, well, that's probably me. And she's like, what do you mean? And then she realized that, oh my gosh, Mom read to Dad all the time. It was just kind of what they did, not knowing that the reason Mom read to Dad is because he couldn't read at all. So, yes, it's hereditary. Sometimes we don't find it in the family background because it's either mild or it just isn't there. And sometimes families can track histories for many years. A lot of times families don't talk about it, and not that they're ashamed of it or they don't they don't want to. It's just that it's not a conversation that typically comes up when I do interviews and I'm talking with families, and I look about, family history. No, mom is good, dad is good. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpas have all graduated high school, college degrees, sisters and brothers that have kids, no issues. But maybe when you start talking about it, the brother or sister will go, yeah, well, gosh, Johnny has been struggling in school for the last couple of years. And you're like, oh, well, what's been going on? You start talking about it and you start seeing these similar symptoms. So you definitely can link it to some hereditary markers. You just have to really think about what some of those signs and symptoms are.
So you were going to the cities and getting tutoring for your son. And then what happens next? And I'm so glad it did, because you have given hope to many, many, many families in this area.
So I always knew that I needed to learn how to teach him, because we worked so hard for 2.5 years to figure out why what I was doing was not working and what everybody else was doing was not working. And when I found that nugget that changed his life within a month, again, I knew I had to figure out how I could do that at home, because traveling to St. Paul every week for 6 months was hard. My husband and my daughter stayed home most of the time. Haley and I would travel by ourselves, and it was expensive. So I had the opportunity that summer to travel to California for a week of training of how to teach this type of program, Orton Gillingham based methodology, and with that learn about dyslexia in general. And the first day I learned it was 1 in 5. And I just thought, I called my husband that night and I said, 1 in 5. Look at what we've had to do just to help our son. And I know there are other kids out there. Hence, going forward a couple of years, just really worked with Haley at home, tutoring him at home, saw this great progress. And it wasn't until a few years later, actually 2011, that an opportunity came up across from my other business for some space to be open. And kind of on a whim, I was like, okay, let's take this space and open. And we did. Within that first year, we had a couple of students come in and started tutoring, and it's been 10 years. We've helped over 800 and almost 900 families across North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota. Our main focus is assessments, making sure that we are assessing correctly for what we do, because it is a very structured, insurance doesn't pay for what we do. So there's a fee base to it. So we're very cognizant about who we can help, but also very strong about the fact that we do help. So we have not only gone from tutoring kids to assessing kids to really, again, those life skills. And it was really just because people used to come up to me and Haley and say, what did you do? What did you do? Because Haley has changed. He's engaged in school. We're not crying anymore. He loves to go to school. He loves his friends. And he's being successful. And it was like, what do you do? And, what about my kid? What about my kid? And like I said, I just knew that there were so many more out there that I knew we could help. So that's what we did 11 years ago, and didn't know where it was going. Just knew that one of my missions was, because I had to travel so far to get help, was to be more accessible to rural areas. And I said at that time, Fargo was a rural area because we didn't have anything. Hence the reason why we now have an office in Holly. We have an office in Detroit Lakes. We have an office in Nowman. We have an office in Grand Forks. We tutor in all of our states virtually. So we have had a virtual program, even though everybody went virtual lately, but we've had a virtual program for tutoring, probably for the last 8 years. We work with kids in northern Minnesota and western North Dakota and South Dakota virtually, so that we can give them access to this life-changing intervention.
And so if somebody is listening to this and going, gosh, this maybe sounds like myself or my child, there's kind of like a checklist on your website that you can go to. And can you talk about that?
Yes, we redid our website a few years ago to make it much more easy for people to just really take a look and see if they feel like it's something that they need to check out. So there is a warning sign checklist on our website. Goes through some preschool, middle school, high school, adult warning signs. Again, some of them that you wouldn't think pertain to dyslexia. But oftentimes, so parents can go through that and just check it on their own. There's a submit button that you can submit that we get it, and we'll call you back and just discuss what the options are, or talk to you a little bit more about what your situation might be, and see if it's something you want to come in and check out. Again, a very easy way to start that process.
And I will tell you from experience, everybody is wonderful to work with there. You know, I remember calling and talking to Jo, and she's like, yeah, you know what, that mom instinct is pretty strong. And I'm like, you're right. You know, and speaking for myself, and I know other members of my family, it was the best thing that I've ever done. And can you give a little example of like what the process would be then? So I make the call. I think I want to get myself tested or my child.
Yep, and thank you for mentioning Jo. She is so good at taking those calls and talking people through what the options are and why to maybe pursue it and why to maybe, you know, go a different direction. But if we decide to pursue it, we have 3 different options just for coming in, and really we want you to be aware of those options to see what you fit best in and what you feel best coming in initially. So we can talk you through just a really quick screening. We can talk you through a literacy assessment, we call it, to see where those specific holes are in literacy, or a full evaluation. So there's some options to decide on what to do. We can always do more if you feel like, you know, we need to do that at the time. We send you out some paperwork, come in for whatever assessment you have. We do some visiting about, again, family history, background of that student or that child or that adult, kind of to see what are those areas of struggles and, you know, what really made you come in and call. Obviously, we do some assessments with whoever that person is, again, child or adult, to see where their literacy skills are, and then just really talk through what the options are. You know, is it something that we think needs intervention right away? Is there something else that's more important at the time to really look at, and intervention isn't the first thing that we need to do? I think one of the things I really am cognizant of is, you know, sometimes we're not the first place that we have to look at. We maybe are in that list, but maybe there's something else that we need to have taken care of prior to being successful where we are here. And maybe we are that first place that needs to be done, but there are other options underneath too. So I really look at that whole child instead of just a piece, because I've been there. I've been told my kid is ADD and needs to be on medication before we do anything. I've told that he, you know, just isn't smart enough. I've been told that he will never graduate from high school. And, you know, there are reasons and ways to look at children in their best light. And we have to figure out what their strengths are and really play to those. So I feel like we have a pretty open atmosphere here. We're pretty down to earth. You know, we're always willing to help and give information, whether that's from us or referrals or whatever that needs to be. Because again, our heart is making sure that those kids and families get the help that they need.
And then, and let's say, you know, you find it, I do have dyslexia, then what is the next step from there?
So let's say that's where we're at. We have dyslexia. So we have our tutoring program that we recommend at least twice a week, our tutoring program. So it keeps that consistency. They're hour-long sessions, 50 minutes in and out of specific tutoring time. We bill by the hour. So we don't have an upfront fee. It's just we bill you every month for those sessions. They're and we set you up on a reoccurring schedule. So let's say tutor schedule and your schedule works for Monday and Wednesday at 4 o'clock. That's your locked in time for tutoring for the school year. We tutor all through the summer. Sometimes those schedules change in the summer just because tutor schedules change and family schedules change, but you're really reserved for twice a week at a particular time and session. And we really see significant changes. And I'm not sure if you have some conversations to this, but, you know, within 3 months of tutoring, oftentimes the first thing we see is just confidence in not fearing that written word, confidence in understanding letters and sounds. Our kids start reading street signs and like, you know, groceries at the grocery store and those little things where you just kind of look at them and go, where did that come from? You know, you never knew that word before. And how come, where did that come from? And it's so fun to watch.
Yes, I can attest to all of those. Yeah, the confidence is huge. And, you know, I think there's such a fear that they're stupid. And I know that was said a lot, you know, in why they can't understand when other kids are getting it. And so that confidence is a really big thing.
It so is, and it is what propels our kids forward, is to know that they're not that S word, that the reason they're not getting it is because they don't have the brain power to get it. And I will say, and this gets a little deeper in, but you have to be average to above average intelligent to be dyslexic. You have to have the cognitive ability to learn. It's just the way that brain processes the information is where that, you know, disconnect comes. So, and oftentimes our kids and dyslexic people are, you know, the people that are changing our world, you know, because they can understand and see things in a different manner. And they are the inventors and the creators and the entrepreneurs of our world. You know, we could make a list of those individuals who have made significant impact in society, and most of them are dyslexic. So that's what I mean. We need to change that confidence and change that outlook in our kids first so that we can build their skills. Yes.
So Kari, thank you for talking with us today. And, you know, if anyone is feeling like this is me, this is my child, do not hesitate. You know, I kind of had put it off for a couple of years actually, and I'm shooting myself now. And then, you know, I'm just glad I did make that step. And it like I said, it has been the best thing. And it's been so impactful. So Kari, thank you for doing what you did and creating this whole facility for all of us in this area to utilize and learning that knowledge to help people. And I'm just thankful and thank you for talking with us today.
Well, I greatly appreciate the time that you've given to me to talk about it. And really, that mom gut is almost always right. Right, moms? That mom gut is always right. And I think just watching you today, I see relief in just your whole body, and we're not done yet, but I think that big piece of how it not only changes those kids, but it changes families and understanding. And so I thank you for bringing me on. I am always happy to share. And I move forward because of moms like you that are taking care of their kids. So I thank you for sharing me with others and hoping that this will open up some lives of those kids who are struggling. So thank you.
Yes. And if you are feeling that this is somebody or somebody you can go to their website and go through that warning sign list and reach out to them. And as I said, everybody there is so kind and understanding and welcoming and full of knowledge. So just don't do what I did and wait any longer. So, thank you again, Kari.
Thank you.